Hey guys, I'm Sam, a Team Detroit Tigers fan, and today we're talking about the Detroit Tigers outfield depth entering 2024 spring. There are 10 guys on this list, some of whom we wouldn't really project as outfielders, but can play some corner outfielders. The 10 guys are Mark Canha, Parker Meadows, Riley Greene, Akil Baddoo, Kerry Carpenter, Justyn-Henry Malloy, Justice Bigbie, Ryan Vilade, Bligh Madris, and Andy Ibanez. The first guy on our list, Mark Canha, was traded to the Tigers as a 1-for-1 for a pitcher named Blake Holub. Mark Canha is 35 years old and is a decent overall player. He had 2.2 B-WAR last year and an OPS plus of 108 over the Milwaukee Brewers and the New York Mets, playing 89 games for the Mets and 50 for the Brewers. He's projecting to be more of a left fielder for the Tigers, as his other position, first base, is primarily locked down by Spencer Torkelson. So I do think that Mark Canha will be solid as a left fielder. Last year, the Tigers had a lot of lefties in the lineup in the outfield spot. I don't think that's really going to change, but Mark Canha is a good righty bat that's solid enough in the outfield. Overall, last year, he had a 755 OPS. He had 11 stolen bases and 11 home runs. He's not going to wow you anymore like he used to, like in 2019, where he had 26 home runs. However, he's still going to be a solid guy who is decently fast, a bit above average, and steal some bases. He doesn't strike out much, and he walks a lot too. So he has good plate discipline. That's his big thing. He's got a 78% chase percentage, an 86% whiff percentage, an 87th percentile K percentage, and a 65th percentile walk percentage. So he walks basically 6% less than he strikes out, which is pretty good. Overall, I think Mark Canha will be a solid left fielder for the Detroit Tigers. Will regress. He is pretty old. And so Mark Canha, a decent trade just because we gave up so little to get him, and he's fixing one of our glaring needs in the outfield as a righty bat. Next up, the guy who projects to be our starting center fielder, if all goes well, Parker Meadows. Last year, Parker Meadows was 23 and did decently as a rookie in his short stint. He played 37 games, hit 232, 331, 368 for an OPS of 699. If he plays more games, which I think he will, I think he'll be a solid defensive center fielder and has some value hitting. He hit his first 3 home runs last year in his cup of coffee. I do think that his value will continue to increase. His brother Austin recently left the Detroit Tigers after having a lot of troubles with mental health issues, which I also feel. Anyways, Parker Meadows himself is a good defender, pretty fast, very fast, and can do and hit enough that he's not going to be too much of a liability out there. He's very tall. He's 6'5", so he's tall for a baseball player. He's not Aaron Judge height, but he's kind of close. And I do think Parker Meadows, in the short sample size, he had 0.9 B-WAR, and Parker Meadows, speedster, outfielder, good defender, probably going to keep Riley Greene to the corners, and he is going to be our guy in center field if he hits well enough in spring training, which he did last year. He hit like 4 or 5 homers. Next up, Riley Greene. Riley Greene was the 5th overall pick in the 2019 draft and has lived up to the hype. Last year, in 99 games, he had 11 home runs, 37 RBIs, and an OPS plus of 117. He was good and decent in the year prior and had 7 stolen bases last year. If you look at his StatCast page from percentile rankings of last year, his xWOBA, his expected weighted on base average, XBA are both almost in the 90th percentile or higher. His xWOBA is 365, projected to be 365, and his XBA is 289. Combine that with an X slug of 499, and he's gonna go places next year. I do think that he is sort of a sneaky candidate for maybe even an MVP. That's how good he was last year, and he only played 99 games, was solid, and can perform even better, albeit in the corners instead of in center field, because Riley Greene does not really project to be a center fielder. Yes, he makes great plays, but no, his range isn't the greatest. Only had one outs above average last year. His arm strength isn't particularly elite, so he's either going to be a left fielder or a right fielder, also because he's not that fast. But he is an amazing hitter, one of the best outfielders recently for the Tigers, in my memory. And I do think Riley Greene is our starting right fielder or left fielder, depending on where they want to put him each day. A guy that is sort of on the cusp of making the big leagues again and being decent as he was in 2021 is Akil Baddoo. He's 25 years old, another lefty, which is a problem the Tigers have. They have a lot of lefties, and it hasn't quite been the same since 2021. 2022, he had a 558 OPS, and in 2023, he did rebound a little bit with a 682 OPS plus, but he still doesn't quite compare to 2021. He is getting better, and I do think that over time he will become playable. But by that point, Max Clark might even be starting to come up a bit farther. A couple other guys we have in the outfield, and who knows, we might even sign some bigger name free agents to play in the outfield at some point. Akil Baddoo is really good at running the bases. He's very fast. He can perform decently. I do think he'll perform not the best, but also not the worst. I don't know that he'll get much playing time, if any, just because of how bad he's been since his breakout 2021 season. I do think that a lot of people are thinking that he is going to be a AAA player, and I personally agree with that analysis just because of how many lefty outfielders the Tigers have, and where he just doesn't really slot in anywhere for the Tigers at this point. Kerry Carpenter, who's up next, broke out last year. The thing is, he's another corner outfielder who's a lefty, and so those all have some problems for the Tigers. He's not a great defender. His outs above average and his range is 22nd percentile, but he hits the ball hard and he hits the ball a decent amount. His sweet spot percentage is 37.2. Hard hit is 44%. His average velocity is 90.1, and his X leg is 460. His numbers aren't going to wow you, but he did break out last year. Last year, he had an OPS plus of 120 with his 811 OPS and 20 home runs. Kerry Carpenter doesn't walk a ton, strikes out a lot, but he does have that power. I think he is a legit player, and he only played in 118 games. So because he missed 44 games, he probably could have been closer to 30 home runs even, like Torque. I do think Kerry Carpenter is probably going to slot up as a DH just because of how the Tigers lined up at this point with Miguel Cabrera not on the team anymore. And so he's probably going to be the main DH because his defense is so bad. But Kerry Carpenter, he's my favorite player. I think he's going to be really good next year. I think that his power is going to even get better. His average will get a bit better. I think that overall, Kerry Carpenter is an above average hitter, and I think it'll stay that way for this year. Next up, someone who's projected to mostly be a third baseman, but I see is also an outfielder, a corner outfielder, is Justyn-Henry Malloy. He was a non-roster invitee to spring training, but he was very good for the Tigers last year. Last year in AAA Toledo, where he spent all his time, he had 92 OPS and 23 home runs. That's a lot of home runs. He played in 135 games, had 611 plate appearances, walked 110 times. 110 at 23. He's turning 24 very soon as of the recording. I think he will be 24 once this podcast comes out, but he's still fairly young. He still has a lot of time to make it to the majors. And Justyn-Henry Malloy is a right-hander, so he could be another guy that when face a lefty could come up for the day, maybe. Or like in a doubleheader, he is another guy that we could have to face the lefties and have him playing because he's a better lefty hitter. I think that this was like the Joe Jimenez trade was good for us because of how good Justyn-Henry Malloy slotted out to be, and Joe Jimenez wasn't that good for Atlanta. He was solid, but not like gonna be probably a star in the majors like Justyn-Henry Malloy seems to be. Justice Bigbie is a bit older than the rest of the guys who are prospects on this list. However, Justice Bigbie was very good, and he put his name on the map last year after hitting 12 home runs and having 985 OPS in Erie. Justice Bigbie was invited to spring training and doesn't really have much of a shot at making the big leagues just because he's a non-roster invitee and he's still like an older player. So I don't think that he has too much of a future, but he's been really very good for the Tigers minor league systems. And Justice Bigbie I don't know a ton about him. He was put on the map. He was drafted in the 9th round, just like Kerry Carpenter was, except in the 2021 MLB draft, and recently turned 25. He was gonna be probably mediocre if he makes the big leagues, just because I don't know how well his skill set will convert from AAA to the big leagues and from AA to AAA even. And so we'll have to see how that plays out before I choose anything really on Justice Bigbie. A minor league guy who has had a little cup of coffee in the majors, 7 plate appearances, is Ryan Vilade. He signed a minor league contract with the Tigers last year and played in Pittsburgh's AAA system last year with a WRC plus of 96 in AAA. I do think he's not going to be a great hitter. He's just not projected to do great. And I don't think, just looking at his stats in previous seasons, like in AAA, if you're hitting with a 96 WRC plus, you probably aren't going to be doing much in the majors. He hasn't had much time to show for anything in the majors. However, Ryan Vilade is still younger than Bigbie and still has some options. So if the Tigers do give him a chance, so they probably won't because he's also a non-roster invitee because he's a minor league contract. I do think that he could make it because he has a little bit of experience that some of the other guys don't. But that little bit of experience is 3 games, 7 plate appearances, 6 at-bats, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. So he's not really projected to do a ton, and I don't think he will, just based on how he's played previously. Bligh Madris is another corner outfielder slash first base guy for the Tigers. He was signed a minor league deal with them in November, and he is probably not going to make the majors, but he was invited to spring training. Bligh Madris is he played both in 2022 and 2023, last year for the Astros, and he did his first home run in 2022. But he also doesn't look like he's going to do very well. His OPS plus was 31 last year. 31. So he was 70% worse than the average hitter. And he wasn't much better in AAA with an 84 WRC plus, which is still better, but he's still 15% worse than an average AAA hitter, which is saying a lot. I think they signed for depth if we really need someone to play, but I don't think that he really will play just because of all the other outfield depth that the Tigers have. And we even have like Max Clark, one of our top prospects, who's an outfielder. Andy Ibanez, the last guy on our list, is kind of a weird player. Last year, he was solid. He had 2 WAR, he was an average hitter, but played mostly second base. However, he did play some outfield. So he's primarily a second baseman, but since we have Colt Keith, I do think that Andy Ibanez will be shifted more towards the outfield, one of the corner outfield spots, where he played some last year and will probably play more this year, as Fangraphs projects. And so I do think Andy Ibanez, he's a solid hitter. He's already 30, gonna be 31 at midseason, so he'll be 31 as his playing age. But he was a solid hitter last year. He did better than I expected out of him. 745 OPS, and he looks to project to be middling for the next couple of years. He had a 271 XBA, a 446 slug, and he doesn't strike out a ton. He doesn't walk much either, but he also doesn't strike out a ton. He's a solid defender over at second base, and I do think Andy Ibanez, well, he is probably going to be a bench warmer or AAA player, and if he's in AAA, he'll be an infielder. But if he plays in the majors, Andy Ibanez is a corner outfielder, probably, at least in my view. I think our primary outfield is going to look something like this: Mark Canha in left, Parker Meadows in center, and Riley Greene in right, with Kerry Carpenter being the primary DH for the Tigers. If you enjoyed, leave a like if you're watching this on YouTube. Rate our podcast if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening to me ramble about the Tigers outfielders outlook. And don't forget, go Tigers.